The soft crash of ocean waves against the rocky Maine coastline had always brought Eleanor a sense of peace. From the bay window of her restored cliffside cottage, she often watched the seagulls drift effortlessly on the breeze, a mug of chamomile tea warming her hands. This morning, though, the sea looked different, cold, distant, and impersonal. A sharp wind had picked up, rattling the panes as if echoing the unease settling in her chest. Eleanor had just finished her early morning yoga when her phone chimed. A message from Uncle Ron. "You need to see this." That was all it said. Underneath the message, a video file waited with the still thumbnail of a familiar room, her parents' dining room. Curious, she tapped play. The grainy footage, clearly recorded in secret, wobbled a bit before stabilizing. The scene was unmistakable: her parents' old maple dining table, the faded seafoam wallpaper, and her mother's collection of ceramic lighthouses perched on the shelf in the background. Her mother, father, and younger sister Caroline were sitting around, drinking tea and chatting. The sun slanted in through the window in that particular golden hue that only the Maine coastline could produce. It should have felt nostalgic. Instead, the words turned her stomach. "She only helps because she feels guilty," her mother said, each word oozing with disdain. "After everything we've done for her, paying the mortgage is the least Eleanor can do." Caroline, lounging casually with her bare feet propped on a chair, scoffed. "Seriously. She acts like she's Mother Teresa or something. Always busy with her little nature tours and writing blogs. I'm out here actually working a real job." Then came her father's quiet voice, the one she had once associated with warmth and strength. "She's always needed to feel important. Let her pay. It makes her feel useful." Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what she had expected, but it wasn't this. Not from them. She played the video again. Then again. With each replay, her heart numbed while her thoughts sharpened. It wasn't just the words, they were cruel, yes, but the ease with which they had said them. The laughter, the casual contempt. The complete absence of gratitude. And the timing made it worse. 4 years ago, when her parents were on the verge of losing their bakery and the house attached to it, Eleanor had come through for them. They were drowning in debt, barely able to cover basic expenses. She, on the other hand, had just landed a major grant for her ecotourism business, Seabright Trails. Though they had mocked her career choices for years, leading birdwatchers through the woods isn't a job, her father had once told her. She didn't hesitate when the call came. But rather than hand them money outright, she took Francesca's advice, her longtime legal and financial advisor. Francesca helped her form an entity called Sea Haven Trust. The trust quietly bought the house from the bank and set up a mortgage agreement, designed to look like a third-party lender. Her parents believed they were still making payments to a regional bank. In truth, Eleanor was covering over 80% of the monthly cost herself. She made sure the name Eleanor never appeared on any official documents, to spare their pride. For 4 years, they'd sent in their small payments, believing themselves responsible and in control. For 4 years, Eleanor had quietly picked up the slack, $5,200 each month, and never once asked for recognition. Now, her sacrifice was being laughed at behind her back. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Uncle Ron. "I couldn't stay silent anymore. They've been talking like this for months. I thought you deserved to know." Ron had always been the black sheep of the family. An easygoing man with an artist's soul and a tendency to speak uncomfortable truths. He'd been the only one to support Eleanor when she dropped out of business school to follow her dream of building a sustainable travel company. They had bonded over long walks through the marsh trails, discussing books and nature. When he overheard a conversation between Eleanor and Francesca at a family reunion 2 years ago, something about estate transfers and legal protections, he pieced together the truth. "You're too kind to them," he'd said then. "They don't deserve it." Eleanor had brushed it off. Their family. She regretted those words now. She turned her chair toward her desk, where her laptop waited. On the screen were the digital ledgers and mortgage summaries for Sea Haven Trust. Line after line of payments, $5,200, $5,200, $5,200. Totaling just under $250,000 over 4 years. She hadn't missed a month. She even paid ahead once when her father had a minor heart scare and couldn't send their portion on time. Her hand hovered over the mouse, then clicked to open the original purchase agreement. Her eyes found the clause Francesca had insisted on. Should the borrower default on payments, the lender, Sea Haven Trust, may exercise its purchase option and assume full ownership of the property, converting current residents into month-to-month tenants. At the time, it felt unnecessary. Now, it felt prophetic. She picked up her phone again and drafted a message to Uncle Ron. "Thank you. I won't let them know you sent it, but everything changes now. They've been protected long enough." Her mind raced, not with anger, but with resolve. The next mortgage payment was due in 2 weeks. For the first time since this arrangement began, she wouldn't be covering the difference. If they didn't make the full payment, the purchase clause would trigger. They would become tenants in the house they thought they owned. And they would know, finally, who had been keeping their roof over their heads. The seagulls cried again outside her window, circling high above the sea. For the first time in years, Eleanor didn't feel small. She felt something else. Power. She stood, pulled back her shoulders, and walked across the cottage to retrieve her file cabinet. It was time to prepare for what came next. She would not rage. She would not plead. She would let them fall. Just as they had done to her. The late autumn wind carried the scent of pine and salt water through the narrow streets of Windmere Bay, the small coastal town Eleanor had called home for most of her life. The gulls were quieter now, the sky an overcast gray, casting the cliffs and rooftops in a somber palette. But inside Eleanor's home office, the light from her desk lamp glowed steady, illuminating old spreadsheets and scanned documents spread across the surface like the pages of a private history she'd long tried to forget. Sea Haven Trust hadn't been born out of ambition. It was a lifeline disguised as a business structure. 4 years ago, the Portman family bakery had nearly collapsed. Her father, once proud of the family's 3-generation business, had refused to modernize it, still handwriting invoices and keeping cash under the counter. He'd scoffed at online ordering, dismissed mobile payments as gimmicks, and was openly hostile toward change. When a nearby highway expansion rerouted traffic away from Main Street, the footfall dried up. Debts began piling like snow in February. At the same time, Eleanor had just finished expanding her eco-tourism startup, Seabright Trails. It had taken years, sleeping in her car between trail surveys, pitching sponsors, cold emailing wildlife foundations, to build credibility. When her coastal conservation tour was featured in Eco Wonder magazine, bookings doubled overnight. With the new influx of capital and support from investors, Eleanor could finally breathe. Then her mother called. "We're going to lose the house," she had said, her voice trembling. Eleanor had offered to help immediately. But the response was complicated. "We don't want handouts," her father had muttered. "This is our responsibility." Caroline, her younger sister, had echoed him. "You already do enough. With your, forest thing." Her mother's silence, brittle and calculating, said more than words. That's when Eleanor called Francesca. Francesca Valencia had been her business consultant and financial strategist for 3 years. A fierce, calm presence, she was known for solving impossible problems. She listened carefully as Eleanor laid it all out, her desire to help without bruising egos, the toxic pride of her father, the judgment from Caroline, and her need to protect herself financially in the process. "I've seen this before," Francesca said. "Family can be both sacred and savage." Together, they crafted a solution, Sea Haven Trust. A limited liability trust disguised as a boutique regional lender. It would buy the home from the bank under full legal compliance, and a carefully worded mortgage agreement would be drafted. Her parents would make token payments monthly, believing they were working with a niche lending firm. Eleanor would cover the majority of the debt, legally protected and emotionally distanced. It had worked. Too well. "I still remember the day we finalized it," Eleanor whispered aloud to herself, watching the rain patter against the window. She had stood on the steps of her childhood home, watching her parents sign the documents without question. Her father hadn't even read them. Her mother had skimmed and asked only, "Is this going to fix it?" Caroline hadn't shown up that day. "Busy with work," she'd said. Eleanor hadn't heard from her until weeks later, when she messaged her asking to borrow money for a business seminar in Boston. Eleanor had sent her $500. No thank you ever came. Now, those same people were gathered around a table laughing at her. And that stung more than the money ever could. She pulled open a drawer and removed a folder marked Backup, Sea Haven Trust Legal Clauses. Her eyes scanned over the purchase option clause again. Francesca had insisted on it, saying, "You'll never need it. But if they ever turn on you, this gives you the power to walk away and still stand tall." At the time, Eleanor had believed, naively, that her family would never turn on her. It was foolish, looking back. The signs had always been there. Her father never hid his disappointment that she hadn't taken over the bakery. A real family legacy, he'd say. But you'd rather go hiking with tourists. Her mother resented her independence. You're too proud, Eleanor. Too cold. A woman your age shouldn't be alone in the woods. And Caroline, well, Caroline had always played the golden child. She was the one who'd stayed close, who helped their parents manage the failing bakery, who posted filtered Instagram stories of running the family business while the shelves went emptier and emptier. But when things got tough, it was always Eleanor who received the quiet texts. Hey, could you cover rent this month? You know I'm good for it. She never once paid her back. Eleanor rubbed her temples, the memory giving her a dull headache. She looked at the framed photo on her desk, one of the few from happier days. She, Caroline, and their dog, Max, playing in the snow, bundled in red scarves. It used to make her smile. Now, it just felt staged. The clock read 10:47 p.m. Her phone buzzed. A text from Francesca. I reviewed the documents again. The clause is enforceable immediately upon default. They've never seen your name, so they won't see it coming. Are you still certain? Eleanor stared at the screen. Was she certain? She thought about that video. The look of smug amusement on her sister's face. The way her mother spat the words least she can do. Her father's silence. Yes. She was certain. They need to understand who they've been mocking, she replied. Let them feel what it's like to depend on someone they don't respect. A pause. Then another message from Francesca. We'll let the next payment default. If they miss it, Sea Haven Trust will initiate ownership transfer within 48 hours. We'll draft the notice tomorrow. Eleanor leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. She hadn't wanted revenge. That wasn't her style. But she had wanted acknowledgement. Gratitude. Even a sliver of decency. She had poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into their stability. She had sacrificed peace of mind, time, emotional safety, all for a family that now ridiculed her when she wasn't in the room. No more. The days of quiet self-sacrifice were over. From now on, she would lead with the same care and control she gave to her business. Boundaries. Structure. Consequences. For the first time in a long while, Eleanor felt proud, not because she'd saved her family, but because she was finally ready to save herself. She closed the folder gently and turned off the lamp. Tomorrow, the tide would turn. And this time, it would sweep away everything false. Eleanor had never been one for theatrics, but this time, she played the part perfectly. She arrived at her parents' home, technically, her home, at exactly 5:58 p.m. The sky over Windermere Bay was painted in the dusky hues of late autumn, casting the sleepy town in a golden pink glow. A chill rode in with the sea breeze as she stepped out of her hybrid SUV, the wheels crunching over the pebbled driveway she'd quietly paid to have repaved last summer. The house looked almost untouched by time, the whitewashed siding, the flower beds her mother had long since let die, and the brass door knocker shaped like a seagull her father refused to replace despite its loose hinge. It was a picture of stubborn nostalgia. For Eleanor, it was also a monument to thankless giving. Her mother opened the door with a beaming smile far too wide to be genuine. Eleanor. You made it, she gushed, arms wide. I always have time for family, Eleanor replied, the words practiced and smooth. She returned the hug, stiff and brief, noting the new pearl bracelet on her mother's wrist, yet another luxury purchased while begging her for just a little more help. Inside, the house smelled of rosemary and roasted garlic. Her mother's famous rosemary chicken was a calculated move, one of Eleanor's favorite meals. It used to work on her. Tonight, it only strengthened her resolve. The dinner table was set with care, cloth napkins, their best cutlery, and wine glasses that hadn't been used since Caroline's engagement dinner, an engagement that had lasted 6 months. Eleanor recognized the effort. They were putting on a show. They wanted something. Caroline sat at the head of the table, legs crossed elegantly in business slacks, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up with a smirk. Look who emerged from the forest. Hope the trees are doing well. Eleanor gave her a gracious smile. Still breathing, unlike Dad's bakery profits. Her father, who had just entered carrying a tray of bread rolls, cleared his throat at the jab but said nothing. They made small talk through the salad course, Caroline's promotion, their mother's bridge club, Eleanor's cute little bird business, as they called it. The patronizing tone clung to every compliment. Eleanor deflected, smiled, nodded when appropriate. She had learned from the best. Tonight, she'd be the model daughter. As the main course was served, her mother dabbed at her lips with a cloth napkin and set down her fork. It was time. "Sweetheart," she began, "we've been talking about some financial concerns." Eleanor tilted her head, feigning curiosity. Her father folded his hands. "With the cost of living going up and Caroline working so hard to keep things running, we thought maybe you could help out a little more with the mortgage." Caroline chimed in, "I'm here every day dealing with repairs, bills, staffing. The business is tough right now, and you're doing well with your tech stuff, right?" "Ecotourism," Eleanor corrected, calmly. "But yes. I'm doing fine." Her mother reached across the table to pat her hand. "We're not asking for much, darling. Just another $1,500 or $2,000 a month. You have no husband or children to worry about. And this is still your childhood home." Eleanor took a slow bite of chicken, chewed, and swallowed. Then, softly, "Of course. Let me look over my accounts." Caroline scoffed, "What accounts? You're always posting about full bookings and wait lists. You're not exactly struggling." Eleanor offered her the kind of smile one gives an arrogant tourist who just stepped into poison ivy. She kept her composure through the rest of dinner. She let them talk themselves in circles, inventing numbers and suggesting she'd be selfish to deny them. She gave vague nods, all while counting down the days in her head. 7 more days until the mortgage payment was due. And she had no intention of covering the shortfall this time. After dessert, she excused herself to the bathroom, but instead of turning left down the hallway, she veered toward her father's study. The door was ajar. Inside, her parents and Caroline huddled over paperwork. She paused just outside, listening. "She'll say no," Caroline was saying. "Did you see how smug she was? We're wasting time asking nicely." "We're not done yet," her father replied. "Remember those cloud documents I found last time she used our Wi-Fi? I copied them. She's hiding money in some company, Sea Haven Trust." Eleanor's heart seized. "They snooped through my files. I looked it up," her father continued. "It's a trust in her name. She's got more money than she lets on. We just need to put some pressure on." Her mother's voice entered, icy and sharp. "She once took money from your father's business account in college. We still have the record. If she won't help willingly, we can remind her. Maybe even contact someone from her investor board." Caroline laughed. "Or go straight to her company. Call them, hint at mental instability or financial mismanagement. That'll get her attention." Eleanor's stomach twisted, not with fear, but with clarity. "They're not family. They're leeches with last names." She slipped away silently, flushed the bathroom toilet for effect, and returned to the dining room with a serene expression. Her mother re-entered moments later, bright smile in place. "Have you had a chance to think about what we discussed?" Eleanor nodded. "Yes. You're right, family helps family. I'll have an answer for you in about 7 days." Caroline frowned. "Why the wait?" "I just need to check some things with my financial advisor," Eleanor said, standing. "Being careful with money is good business sense." She looked straight at her sister as she echoed Caroline's own line from earlier. The moment landed with a thud. Her mother walked her to the door, embracing her tightly. "We knew you'd do the right thing, sweetheart." "Yes," Eleanor murmured, stepping back. "I always do." As she drove home under the darkening sky, she called Francesca. "They tried to blackmail me," she said. "They went through my cloud. They're planning to ruin me if I say no." Francesca didn't sound surprised. "Then it's a good thing the paperwork's ready." "They think they're manipulating me," Eleanor said, her voice calm, cold. "But they don't realize, they're already tenants in my house." A silence passed, then Francesca said, "You're really going through with it?" "I am. I'll give them one last week. Let them play their games. Then I end it." The days that followed the family dinner moved slowly, almost cruelly so. Eleanor marked them with quiet rituals, morning tea on the porch, long walks along the pine-lined cliffs, and evening meetings with Francesca to finalize the legal process. Though the wind howled louder each morning, and frost began to bite the grass outside her window, Eleanor remained still and composed. She was no longer waiting for their approval. She was waiting for their fall. 7 days. Each morning brought another message from her mother, her sister, or even her father, each one framed with faux concern, vague hints, and the unspoken but unmistakable request for more money. Eleanor didn't respond to most of them. She spent that week preparing for war in silence. On day 6, Francesca sent her a simple message. "Documents are finalized. If the payment doesn't post, Sea Haven Trust will initiate ownership transfer at 9 a.m. the next morning. Eleanor stared at the message for a long time before replying. Let it roll. Day 7. The final day arrived quietly. The morning sun barely broke through the overcast skies. Eleanor wrapped herself in her wool shawl and watched the waves from her porch, a steaming mug in hand, her breath visible in the air. She checked the Sea Haven Trust payment dashboard. Still nothing. The system marked the mortgage as pending default. At 7:44 a.m., her mother called. She let it ring twice before answering. Good morning, Mom. Her mother sounded rushed, panicked under a veil of politeness. Ellie, dear. Something's wrong with the mortgage. The bank, Sea Haven Trust, or whatever they're called, they've sent us a notice. They said the payment didn't go through and we're at risk of default. That can't be right, can it? Eleanor sipped her tea. Did you try to make the full payment? Well, we transferred our usual amount, her mother said defensively. It's always been enough. But now they're saying we're short thousands of dollars? Interesting, Eleanor replied. Silence. Her mother pressed again. Ellie. Can you call them? Maybe you can help fix this. Eleanor set her mug down. Mom. There's something you should know. Sea Haven Trust isn't a bank. There was a pause, and her mother's tone dropped. What do you mean? It's an LLC. My LLC. I own it. Another silence, longer, colder. What? Eleanor stood from her chair and walked to the edge of her porch, staring out at the slate blue sea. Her voice was calm, controlled. I've been paying the majority of the mortgage every single month for the past 4 years. You and Dad thought you were paying a bank, but really, you were sending a small portion of the payment while I covered the rest. Over $240,000 from me alone. And now, because you failed to make the full payment this month, the clause we included in the agreement has triggered. The house is no longer under mortgage. Wait, what does that mean? It means the property now legally belongs to Sea Haven Trust, Eleanor said. Which means it belongs to me. The line went dead silent. Then, this is a joke. You're joking. I'm not, Eleanor said, almost gently. I filed the ownership transfer this morning. Starting next month, you'll be listed as tenants. You'll be under a month-to-month lease. Her father's voice suddenly joined the call. They'd put her on speaker. You ungrateful. Careful, Eleanor interrupted, her voice icy now. That's no way to speak to your landlord. The line buzzed with static tension. You can't do this, her mother said, voice trembling. We're your family. You're right, Eleanor said. You are. And for years, I bent over backwards to help you. I built a legal structure just so you could keep your dignity while I saved your home. And how did you thank me? With whispers, laughter, and betrayal. Her voice cracked only slightly, but she pushed forward. I heard what you said about me. I saw what you wrote in your little group chats. I know about the threats, about going to my investors, my clients, even the fabricated stories you planned to use to force my hand. You were willing to ruin my life over a lie, all while I was paying your bills. Her mother stammered. You don't understand. We were just angry. No, Eleanor said flatly. You were honest. That's the only part I appreciate. She ended the call. She didn't wait for another one. By that afternoon, her inbox was flooded. Uncles, cousins, old family friends. All bearing messages cut from the same mold. How could you do this to your parents? Family comes first. They gave you everything, this is how you repay them? Eleanor deleted each message unread. She didn't need validation from people who didn't know the truth, or chose not to. Francesca called later that evening. They tried to stop the transfer. Their attorney made a few calls. But the papers are solid. You're in the clear. Did they mention the eviction clause? They did. If they refuse to pay rent under the new agreement, they'll be served notice by the end of next month. Standard process. Eleanor sighed, then smiled faintly. Good. You really want to go through with it? Yes, Eleanor said. They made their choices. Now they'll live with them. 2 weeks later. Her parents tried every card they had. They pleaded. They threatened. Caroline emailed her 3 times, then posted a cryptic message on social media about selfish sisters with superiority complexes. It was quickly taken down. But Eleanor didn't waver. She spent the days finalizing the rent agreement and sent it via certified mail. Her parents refused to sign. Francesca sent the first legal notice of impending eviction. They had 30 days. That night, Eleanor sat on her porch again, wind howling around her like an orchestra tuning before the final performance. This wasn't about money anymore. It never had been. It was about respect. About finally refusing to play the role they wrote for her, the grateful, obedient daughter with no boundaries. The family fixer. They had mocked her. Used her. Planned to destroy her career the moment she stopped complying. But now? Now, she held the deed. The power. The silence. Let them scream. Eleanor had found peace in the truth. And the truth, at long last, had consequences. 3 months had passed since the storm hit, though the skies over Windermere Bay were serene, pale blue, and clear on this particular afternoon. Eleanor stood barefoot in the middle of the now empty living room, her footsteps echoing softly against the hardwood floors she had once helped sand and stain herself. The room looked different without the weight of furniture, family portraits, or the carefully curated clutter of warmth her mother had insisted on. Instead, it now felt like what it always had been beneath the surface, hollow. Sunlight poured through the windows, painting golden stripes across the floor. She let the silence wrap around her like a shawl. They were gone. Her parents had moved out the previous week, after exhausting every attempt to hold on to what they no longer owned. They had tried everything: emotional appeals, legal loopholes, even a smear campaign on social media. But Eleanor had come prepared for it all. The documentation was airtight, the lease notices bulletproof. They had no legal ground to fight her. And when the final notice came, served without fanfare by the local sheriff's office, they had no choice but to comply. She didn't attend the move out. She didn't need to see it. But Uncle Ron did. They fought the movers every step of the way, he had said over coffee just days ago, like they thought someone would magically swoop in and reverse it all. Caroline threw a lamp. Your mother cried. Your dad just sat on the steps, silent. Eleanor had simply nodded. She didn't revel in their humiliation. That wasn't the point. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. For too long, she had allowed their narratives to shape her life. That she was cold. Ungrateful. That her success was accidental. That without them, she would be nothing. They had cloaked their resentment in the language of sacrifice, turning their support into a currency she could never repay, no matter how much she gave. But in the end, they hadn't lost the house because of Eleanor. They had lost it because they mistook her silence for weakness. They thought kindness was a lack of spine. They were wrong. In the weeks leading up to the eviction, Caroline had made one last attempt to strike back. She sent an anonymous letter, so poorly disguised it was laughable, to Eleanor's top investor, accusing her of misappropriating funds, citing her emotional instability as a potential liability. Unfortunately for Caroline, Eleanor had already beaten her to it. 2 months earlier, Eleanor had sat down with her advisory board, presented the entire situation, video footage included, and laid out the steps she was taking to protect both herself and the integrity of Seabright Trails. The letter backfired. Not only did her investors publicly reaffirm their trust in her, but the ethics board at Caroline's firm opened a formal investigation into her behavior. Rumor had it she'd been quietly reassigned to an internal desk job with no client interaction. Her father, meanwhile, had attempted to take the matter to the local press, framing Eleanor as a greedy daughter exploiting her aging parents. But when journalists dug deeper, they found a very different story, a woman who had shielded her family financially for years, only to be maligned and threatened. No articles were published. In the end, the only people who bought into their narrative were the ones too far removed, or too afraid, to face the truth. Eleanor had blocked most of them. Today, she wasn't just visiting the house for closure. She was here to begin something new. Francesca arrived 10 minutes later, carrying a bottle of champagne and a thick folder under one arm. She handed the champagne to Eleanor with a smile. You ready? Eleanor nodded. They sat on the bare floor in the living room, backs against the wall. Francesca opened the folder and pulled out the final set of documents. The sale is already attracting attention, she said. Multiple buyers. You can hold out for a higher offer if you want. I don't want to sell, Eleanor said quietly. Francesca paused. No? I want to convert it. I've been working on the plan with Uncle Ron. We're going to turn this place into a community space, non-profit headquarters, event rentals, maybe even a weekend retreat for survivors of financial abuse. People who've been manipulated by family, left in the dark, made to feel guilty for having boundaries. There are more of us than you'd think. Francesca blinked, visibly impressed. You've already thought this through. I've had time, Eleanor said. And I've learned something important. She looked around the empty room, then back at her advisor. They taught me family is everything. That it comes before money, boundaries, even self-respect. But what they really meant was that their needs came first. Their comfort. Their egos. Not mine. She exhaled, the last thread of resentment leaving with it. This house was once a symbol of everything I owed. Now, it'll become a symbol of everything I chose. Later that evening, Uncle Ron and his wife arrived with cleaning supplies and fresh paint samples. They hugged Eleanor tightly, no questions asked. Whatever you build here, Ron said, surveying the space, you'll build it stronger than anything they ever gave you. Thanks to you, Eleanor said. For showing me the truth. You gave me credit I didn't deserve, Ron replied. You were always strong enough to see it. You just needed to believe it. She smiled and squeezed his hand. Outside, dusk was settling over Windmere Bay. The house stood quiet but no longer burdened with secrets. It was hers now, not just on paper, but in spirit. And she would fill it with light, with honesty, with something better than the cold legacy left behind by betrayal. As they opened the windows to let in the sea air, Eleanor glanced at the kitchen table where it had all started, where they had once sat, laughing at her, while she paid their bills in silence. She wasn't their burden. She was her own beginning. And now, finally, her story was hers to write.